Jiaqi, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm sure that Tim will also have a couple words of intro before we jump into that.
Yeah, I really can't wait for this chat. It's going to be a ton of fun. Landbot, a great sponsor for the Zeroqode conference. Please be sure to check out their booth in your Pine application. Jiaqi, do we have you here?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
How you doing? Yep, loud and clear. Fantastic. Excited for you to get started here.
Thank you. So let me quickly share my screen and we can start right away. All right. So hi everyone. This is Jiaqi, CEO and co-founder of Landbot, the most intuitive no-code chatbot builder. Today, though, I won't be talking too much about conversational bots too much. My main topic here is frictionless customer experience, which I believe will become the ultimate competitive advantage that can help you in your no-code business. So first, let's talk a little bit about the no-code revolution we are living in today. This is a no-code landscape recently built by Scott Brinker, who is considered as the father of martech. In this case, Scott essentially is dividing and categorizing most no-code solutions in three buckets. First, the UI category with players like Webflow, then the data category with companies like Airtable, and finally the automation or logic layer with Zapier, right? And then we have several companies that are that has some overlap between different categories. For example, Landbot is in the overlap between UI and automation, or Bubble, which is in the overlap between UI and data, right? And the interesting thing about no-code is that it has started a long time ago, right? But since the COVID-19 breakout, it suddenly became so hot, right? All major media is talking about it. It seems like no-code will revolutionize the software development in the future. So in order to understand better the future of no-code, our friends at Adalo, they did an interesting prediction on how the future of no-code will look like in the next 7 to 10 years, right? So for example, by the end of 2021, which means next year, they predict that more product will be launched made with no code than coding. Or in 2022, product built with no code will reach a mainstream status. Another interesting milestone in 2025, where no code courses will be offered in major schools and universities. And as always, the politicians are late to the party. They predict in 2027, some major politicians will be talking about the importance of no-code. Finally, right? So as we have seen, there's like a huge potential for the future of no-code. That's all the positive impact of a no-code solution. But what about the negative impact, right? Let's check on the other side of the coin. To truly be successful in the industry, we need to also understand what are the potential challenges we'll be facing in the future. And in that case, first, with the no-code democratizing the creation of software, we can understand that there will be an explosion of competition. All product categories will become very crowded. The next challenge is the distribution, right? It will become increasingly hard for makers or no coders to acquire customers. And due to the abundance of a product available, it will make the customer expectation higher than ever before. So it will be increasingly hard also to satisfy our customers. And as you can see, all this sounds pretty terrible, right? So what can we do in order to maybe still succeed in such a saturated market? Well, conventional wisdom says that history is the best teacher. So we should maybe look in the past and try to find common patterns and get insight on how people have succeeded in saturated market in the past. And in this case, let's take a look at the martech industry, which has many common similarities with the no-code space. Here we can see the evolution of the martech landscape. It started in 2011, where we have only 150 companies in the martech industry. And fast forward to today, in 2020, we have more than 8,000 martech companies. So the number of companies has multiplied by more than 50, which is crazy, right? So it becomes increasingly hard for most players to stand out and succeed in the martech space. So I started digging and did some intense research on how people are, working in the martech landscape, and I found few outliers who, despite having huge and fierce competition in their market category, they still become very successful. And here we are talking about companies like Zoom in the video conference category, Slack in the enterprise messaging category, Superhuman for email clients, or Notion for note-taking apps, right? All four of them are working in market categories that have already incumbent players before them and a lot of alternative options available. And I try to find whether there are certain common patterns that make them become successful. And after some digging, I did find their secret source, which is the experience. Essentially, all four of them are winning in their respective markets because they are able to offer a superior experience than their competition. But experience, not just as beautiful visual design, that's just part of it. But we are talking rather about the overall interaction with the customer and the company and the product they are offering. So the next question I had is whether this could be something we can easily replicate in our own business. In other words, can we also create far better experience than the competition that can help us win in the market, right? So I started, reading a bunch of books and then also talking to the, top people in my network to get their insight on how to create a good experience. And to my surprise, there doesn't seem to have any consensus about how to create an experience. Like everyone has their own opinion on what a good experience should be, but nobody has a concrete idea to how to systematically build a good experience and build a product that with a good experience. So in the end, I had to kind of came up with my own framework. And that's what I call the frictionless customer experience, FCX, right? The most simple definition I would give to frictionless customer experience is that it's the alignment of 4 C's, which describe the mindset of a company that has a customer-centric approach to offer the right content in the right channel within the right context. And all that should be working together to provide that frictionless experience we have talked about. So let's take a look, a closer look at each one of these elements. The first and the most important one is the customer, right? So that's the first C. By customer, we are referring to someone who has a problem or needs that we as a business are actively trying to solve. So it's very critical for the business to choose the right customer to work with. Otherwise, if we are not choosing properly, we could end up working for the wrong customer, and that will be very dangerous to our business. And choosing right customer will also help us to get competitive advantage. A very interesting example here is the case of Nintendo Wii. Back in 2006, the video console industry, the main leaders were Sony with PlayStation and Microsoft with Xbox. Both of them are in a fierce competition in terms of game graphics and processing powers. And at that time, Nintendo couldn't afford to compete in technical specifications. So they had to take a look on other areas to innovate. After some research, they find out that Sony and Microsoft both are mainly focusing on offering game experience for hardcore gamers. So they decided to innovate on the type of customer they could work with. In that case, they have designed a game console, a new game console for the casual gamer segment, who are gamers who don't care so much about game graphics or the processing power. They are people who just want to have some fun with the family. So in that case, what they did is design a radically different experience around that customer segment. And with that, they have launched the Nintendo Wii, which became instant hit. And the sale of Nintendo Wii soon surpassed the combined between Xbox and PlayStation. Once we understand who is the customer, the next part is understanding the context of the customer. And by context, we are referring to all the surrounding events that the customer is living in each moment. The context can be very dynamic, and it can change each time depending on what the customer is doing. Is the customer working? Is the customer reading? Is the customer playing games, etc.? Depending on the context of the customer, we should design and offer a different experience. A very great example to illustrate this case is the notification system of Slack, right? So all major product decision in Slack has to be carefully designed and studied to make sure that it provides the best experience and make the customer be most efficient in their team communication. Here you can see the flow that Slack has designed for their notification feature. So in order for Slack to send you a notification, they have to go through different decision steps to analyze the context of the user at each moment to finally decide whether they should send you the notification or not. And as you can see, all the level of complexity for just one single feature. Imagine all the rest of the features that the Slack is providing to us, right? That's why Slack is one of the fastest growing SaaS company in the history. They have reached 100 million of revenue in just 2 years. The next point, once we understand the context, is providing the right content to our customer, right? And by content here, we are referring to the solution we can offer to customers to solve his or her problem, right? So how can we design the right content? Well, let's first do a quick thought experiment, right? So every audience here, I would like to ask you to try to draw the letter E on your forehead with an imaginary pen, right? Let's try to draw it and see what came up with. This is actually a study done by Stanford University with a group of students, and the result was quite fascinating. What they found out is that there's actually two ways of drawing E's. One, self-focused, like what we are seeing on the left side, where we are drawing the E as we see it in our mind. And then another focus rather from the other user perspective, right? And as a result, we see that 90% of the people are drawing the E's rather from a self-focused perspective. And that's what happens most of the time when people are designing the solution to their customers, right? They're usually thinking in their own perspective rather from the customer perspective. And that can be very dangerous. A very interesting example here is how Snapchat has designed their video recording feature. So before Snapchat, most video sharing features in mobile are in landscape or horizontal mode. But Snapchat found out that the most natural position for people to hold their phone is actually in vertical mode. That's why they have designed their whole app experience around vertical videos, which became a huge success for them, attracting millions of users for their app. And today, most major camera related applications are designing videos with vertical mode as the standard design paradigm. If we have done a proper job with all those C's before, the final C stands for the channel, right? Which refers to the way we use to deliver our content to our customer, right? There is a old business mantra which says, be where your customer are, right? Throughout the history, whenever a new channel emerges, right, new companies take over and create opportunities to become winner in the new market. This is what we call the channel product fit, right? Here you can see the evolution of dating app industry, where when a mobile channel emerges, Tinder become as the clear winner in that channel. And another fascinating case study is Grammarly. So Grammarly is the best grammar checking tool in the market. For those who haven't used it, it's essentially correcting you and helping you writing better with the app, right? And one key success in the case of Grammarly is that they have designed their solution to be where their customer are. They have built plugins for Microsoft Office, for Chrome, for many different apps, for many different tools where the customer needs the Grammarly most, which is when they need to write something, right? Whether it's about writing a blog post, updating your Facebook status, filling out your job application, whenever you need to have grammar check, Grammarly want to be there and helping you out. And finally, I want to add a bonus point, which is the fifth C. In this case, it stands for the cost. So unless you want to do a charity project or just building product for fun, right? You have to take into account the economics of your business model. In other words, you have to think about how are you going to charge your customer? What's the pricing structure you are going to use? What is the cost of acquiring customers, right? And all that falls under the cost. Brian Balfour, who was the former VP of growth in HubSpot, have came up with this concept of a ARPU CAC spectrum. ARPU stands for average revenue per customer, and CAC stands for cost of acquisition of customers. So essentially, depending on the relationship between the revenue you can get from each customer and the cost of acquiring them, you should leverage one channel, one acquisition strategy or another, right? So for example, for a low ARPU company, their strategy should be mainly be around using viral channels or B2C SEO channels, right? That's why most consumer companies, consumer tech companies, they are leveraging viral channels because they can only afford a very low cost of acquisition. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you have a higher ARPU, meaning if your customer are paying you a very large amount, you can afford to hire enterprise sales teams to close the deal. In fact, that's how most enterprise B2B companies are acquiring their customers. And then in the middle, there's a danger zone for those companies that are in between, right? So if you have a mid-level of ARPU, you can afford to do a B2B inside sales acquisition because it's too expensive. But the paid acquisition strategy might not work neither because there's too much friction to convince customers to buy your solution. Here we can see some successful companies on how they leverage the acquisition strategy depending on their ARPU level, right? For example, WhatsApp was leveraging the low ARPU, has a low ARPU. In fact, they haven't even able to monetize their customer base, right? That's why they are mainly a growth driver was viral. But on the other hand, companies like Zendesk or HubSpot, they have been very successful by using inside sales team to close deals. And to conclude, I have 3 hacks that will help you to apply the frictionless customer experience framework. So the first is always leverage the framework and start with the customer first, right? The customer is at the center of the whole framework, and we should first decide who is our customer, and then have an alignment with each of the other C's of the framework. With that, we can easily detect misfit in the framework and try to reduce possible friction with the customer. Secondly, we need to apply the frictionless framework across all stages of the customer journey, from acquisition all the way to retention of our customers. Depending on where our customer is in the customer's journey, we should design a different experience according to that. And finally, remember, FCX is a mindset. So in order to be successful with that framework, we have to fully integrate FCX into our team culture. So we have to have all our team members align on how important is the experience for our customer and how to fully leverage the experience as the competitive advantage for the business. And with that, I have shared all of the strategy on using frictionless customer experience to grow your no-code business. If you have any questions, right, I will be more than happy also to address them. I'm not sure if we have any time left to address the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Jiaqi. I really appreciate it. It was really great to hear more about how we can leverage this sort of framework and create a customer-centric framework and approach. Really interesting, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys giving me the chance to talk here.